following is a presentation of Learfield IMG College. From the Georgia Southern Sports Network, powered by Learfield IMG College.
Wings up, Eagle Nation! Touchdown, Georgia Southern!
This is Inside Eagle Nation, your all-access look into Eagle athletics.
Taking a look through all the other action in Georgia Southern athletics this past week. A lot of road action. A lot of teams hitting the old I-16 out of town.
Getting on the steel horse and taking us to parts north, south, west, wherever. Can't really go too much farther east.
Now let's return to the Learfield IMG College studios. Here are your hosts, Colin Lacy and Danny Reed.
That's a fact, Jack.
Welcome into another edition of Inside Eagle Nation, episode number 171 on this week's edition. Colin Lacy alongside the voice of the Eagles, Danny Reed, after a, we'll call it, interesting trip down to Louisiana for Georgia Southern women's basketball. We'll dive into that a little bit later on, but Georgia Southern men's and women's basketball getting ready to head to Pensacola tomorrow for the Sunbelt Conference Tournament.
Speaking of the steel horse.
Yeah, no kidding. Heading west this time. But going down to Pensacola for the Sunbelt Tournament, that starts on Wednesday and Thursday. But we'll get everything going for men's and women's basketball. Everybody, all 24 men's and women's basketball teams heading to the Pensacola Bay Center this time. Good to see everybody in the one spot. Having to change the schedule a little bit, but good to have everybody in the Bay Center and not Pensacola State College like last year.
We've only driven by it. We have not been inside that venue yet.
Women's basketball, I think, made it to Pensacola State or to Pensacola Bay Center and then realized that their game was at the other one. But, yeah, that's as close as they got last year.
It looked beautiful from the outside.
Yeah, I'm sure. Looked beautiful online. But
we didn't see it. Just drove by it a few times. Right on the water. It's very pretty.
But you will be heading down to Pensacola tomorrow with Georgia Southern men's basketball. Women's basketball going to be making the trip. I will be calling those remotely here from Statesboro as Georgia Southern baseball continues the start of their 2022 season. But we dive into everything news and notes-wise in Georgia Southern athletics as men's tennis split the week as got the victory over Lipscomb on Friday, 5-2 in Nashville, and then stayed in Nashville and fell 7-0 to Belmont on Saturday. They will have one match coming up on Sunday inside the Wallace Tennis Center against South Carolina State here in Statesboro, 1 o'clock the first serve on Sunday. Georgia Southern women's tennis getting things going this weekend as they will be at Mercer on Thursday, 3 p.m., the first serve up in Macon, and then they will head home to the Wallace Tennis Center to face Presbyterian for a 10 a.m. first serve. Again, that one on Sunday after a pretty good weekend for women's tennis as they hit the road, had a good victory on the road earlier on this week on Thursday against Mercer 4-0 before defeating Presbyterian at home this past Sunday 6-1.
They had to literally weather the storm that delayed Georgia Southern baseball for 25 minutes before the finale against UCF, but tennis experienced the same thing, but they stuck with it and picked up a nice win.
They will have a week off, and then Tuesday they will take on Jacksonville State when they return home to the Wallace Tennis Center.
You've been to Jacksonville State a couple times.
I have. Mm-hmm. Mike Paris, the longtime radio voice of the Jacksonville State Gamecocks.
Going to be moving up to the FBS.
They are.
Conference USA.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Georgia Southern Rifle will hit the range on Saturday and Sunday at the Southern Conference Championships all day, Saturday and Sunday in Lexington, Virginia. Beautiful part of the country.
Where VMI is located.
Yes, that it is.
I pass by it every time I go back to my hometown in Western Maryland. I've only been to VMI's campus once, and that was for football when I was with the Citadel. I think that was 2012. And seeing a place that does its football presentation the same as the Citadel, where their Corps of Cadets walk out just like they do at Johnson Haygood Stadium. They did the same thing at Foster Stadium in Lexington. But that's also a really meaningful time of year for Georgia Southern Rifle, considering how good the last two tournaments have been for them.
Yes. No doubt about it. They will go for another SoCon championship this weekend. Georgia Southern softball had the entire week canceled last week because of COVID concerns. They were trying to reschedule the midweek game against South Carolina for later in the season, and then had to withdraw from the Georgia Classic this past weekend up in Athens. But they will get things going again. On Thursday, they head to Jacksonville to take on JU just a couple of days after Georgia Southern baseball down there. But then they will head to Madeira Beach for the Springs games. They will face Albany on Friday at 4 p.m., Rhode Island at 1:30 on Saturday, a future Sunbelt Conference opponent in Southern Miss on Saturday at 4 p.m., Nebraska, Ohio on Sunday at 11:30 a.m., and then Middle Tennessee for a 2 p.m. first pitch on Sunday.
That's the way to get back into it.
Yeah, you see a lot of these tournaments early in softball. There was one down in Lafayette this past weekend that Louisiana hosted, but 15 teams all in one complex. That's a lot of softball to be played in a couple of days.
Especially in the case of Georgia Southern, which wouldn't have played for 2 weeks by the time that actually gets started this coming weekend.
But getting into Georgia Southern men's and women's basketball, both teams splitting the week against the Louisiana schools, did it the same way, just in different days, but both falling to Louisiana and then defeating ULM.
That's right.
We did it. We got the same place, just different ways to go about it.
You definitely had a different way to go about it.
There ain't no doubt about that. But before we get into the true X's and O's of what this past weekend looked like, they had the Sunbelt Conference Postseason Awards coming out, as Georgia Southern getting the same award for both sides, a first-year award that the Sunbelt is offering, the Sixth Man or Sixth Woman of the Year. Taryn Ward winning the Sixth Woman of the Year for Georgia Southern women's basketball. Elijah McCadden winning the Sixth Man Award for Georgia Southern men's basketball. But on the women's side, Star Jacobs from UTA took Player of the Year. Sharika Wright from UT Arlington was Coach of the Year. Tyriana Doucette was the Louisiana Defensive Player of the Year. Lauren Pendleton from Arkansas State was Freshman of the Year. Newcomer of the Year goes to Alexia Alesh from Appalachian State. Georgia Southern just one selection on the Sunbelt all-conference teams, and second team goes to Taryn Ward. Everything else was coming from other opponents, but first team for the women's side, Asia Blunt from Coastal, Tyriana Doucette from Louisiana, Star Jacobs from UTA, Denasia Hood from Texas State, and Felmis Karanga from Troy. And I don't know that there was a whole lot of surprises on the first-team league for the women's side.
Think about what you just said. The fact that Taryn Ward was the Sixth Woman of the Year, and she was second-team all-league.
Yes.
Not a starter, but still considered one of the top 10 players in the league.
Yeah, and Taryn, we talked about her, a Freshman of the Year last year. She is somebody that towards the last couple of weeks of the regular season, she started 9 games, and I think that's actually the number of games that Elijah McCadden coincidentally started for men's basketball.
Because you gotta.
Right. Taryn doing that on the back half of the schedule, Elijah doing it on the front half of the schedule for men's basketball. But a huge congratulations going out to Taryn Ward for Georgia Southern women's basketball, as this week was one of the longest 4 days I think any of us have ever experienced.
Part of me wants to put my feet up and just let you go, but
we don't have that kind of time, and this is a podcast.
This is your story, so you take us where you want to take us. I know part of it, but you tell us what you want to tell us.
So I'll give you the abridged version because, again, we don't have that kind of time for all of it. So the original plan for women's basketball to get to Monroe was leaving Hanner Fieldhouse at 5 o'clock, which happened on time, getting to Savannah, flying from Savannah to Houston at about 7:30, land in Houston about 9:30. Check that off. We got that. That's where the wrinkles started to come. Supposed to fly from Houston to Shreveport, which is only about an hour and a half away from Monroe. Circling on the map, I see.
I don't know if that's close. I don't know if that's right, but I think it's close.
My geography was way off when I thought where we were going. But we load the plane in Dallas, rather. Not Houston, Dallas.
Okay, we got to move this to here.
Yeah, and move that dot over there.
This is east. This is Bryanburg territory. We got to go more towards Josh Sowers.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
And Josh Sowers is a part of this story.
Yes, he is.
And so we're in Dallas. We board the plane at about 11:30 to take off to Shreveport. We then get told that we have to deplane because the plane has to de-ice. So we get off the plane, back into the main airport. Well, we are delayed for an hour, probably 3 or 4 different times. We get to about 5 o'clock-ish, and then they say, because of the ice storm and the winter weather that's coming through the Dallas area, the plane is canceled. There are no more planes to Shreveport until at least Saturday. Well, that does nobody any good.
Nah, that's not going to work.
No. So trying to figure out, and long story short, good friend of ours, Rob Matwick with the Texas Rangers, helps us out immensely of helping us get a bus, helping get American Airlines to give us back our luggage. So we get on a bus with luggage in hand, which kind of hit or miss there for a little while. Go from Dallas, drive to Monroe, which is about a 5-hour drive. We get to Monroe at about 12:30 Central Time. So about a 21-hour travel day for women's basketball just to get up and play the next day. Thankfully, it was a 7:30 tip-off in Monroe inside the Fayette-Ewing Coliseum. And what does Georgia Southern women's basketball do? Just goes out and beats them 83-68. Now, ULM, we've talked about their struggles.
Yeah.
0-14 is what they finish up the conference slate, and we'll dive into the bracket a little bit later on. But a really impressive game for Georgia Southern. Deja Holmes hits 5 first-half threes, sets a career high of 15 points. Really nice job by Deja. Really helped Georgia Southern get out in the second quarter, outscoring Louisiana and Monroe 24-15, and that was really all she wrote on that one. As ULM, again, struggling. You've had a couple of different players that really tried to step up for the Warhawks, but Kira Brimsey and Kyron Whittington really finished with 15 points apiece, and that was the offense for ULM, and a little bit too late for the Warhawks as Georgia Southern defeats them 83-68. And then Georgia Southern heads down to the Ragin' Cajun territory, and you would think going to the Cajun Dome, but move that down a lot.
Well, the Cajun it's the pressure cooker.
Yeah.
So you go from the crock pot to the pressure cooker. Did I not tell you this?
No.
That's what I nicknamed the 2 arenas in Louisiana. Fayette-Ewing Coliseum is the crock pot. The Cajun Dome is the pressure cooker.
That's fantastic.
And thankfully, they're staying in the league, so we'll be able to use those down the line.
Hopefully, I get to see the Cajun Dome again, because this time, because of Mardi Gras. Mardi Gras is, for those that don't know, a gigantic deal in southeastern Louisiana.
It's tomorrow, but you've got the parties that are going on roughly a week leading into it.
Correct. The parades and whatnot happened last week in Monroe.
Parades.
Yeah. What time's the parade? I know the theme of this one.
Yeah.
All the parades in Lafayette were happening this weekend, Friday and Saturday. So Georgia Southern gets moved to historic Earl K. Long Gymnasium, about a 1,100-seat facility that was built in the 1920s. A brick building all the way around. This building is so historic that there is a neon lights sign, like the neon lights open sign,
yes.
But there's one on the face that says Southeastern.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. Until you walked in. It was awful historic. Let's put it that way.
You could feel the history when you walked in.
No doubt.
Okay.
Without a doubt. It's the home of Louisiana volleyball, and then men's and women's basketball have to play usually about a game a year in it.
But the men also have Blackham Coliseum, which is where they had to go a few years ago when the Cajun Dome was getting renovated.
Correct. Why we didn't do that, I'm not quite sure.
Probably one of the other balls taking place over there.
Sure.
Okay.
I'll give it to you.
Yeah.
But after a lot of different issues with historic Earl K. Long Gymnasium, Georgia Southern falls to the Ragin' Cajuns 56-54. Louisiana got out to a 21-7 lead after one quarter, and then Georgia Southern battles back, ties the game with about 8.5 to play in the third quarter, and it's back and forth the entire third and fourth quarter. The fourth quarter, really a defensive struggle. Neither team got over 10 points in the quarter. But Deja Holmes hits 5 threes in the first half again. I don't know what it is about the Louisiana air, but she loves it.
Wow.
And so 15 points for Deja Holmes. But the real story for Georgia Southern women's basketball, and this one couldn't get anything going for Taryn Ward and Maya Burns. Maya finishes with 4 points, all of that coming from the free throw line. Taryn Ward finishes with just 1 point. But Taryn 0 for 16 from the floor, 0 of 4 from behind the arc. Maya Burns 0 of 8 from the floor, 0 of 2 from long range. Just couldn't get any of the offense going. And Louisiana's a really good defensive team. We just talked about Tyriana Doucette being the defensive player of the year, and she took over that fourth quarter, and she was doing whatever she wanted to. But a tough one for Georgia Southern, because the Eagles, if they were able to get the victory in Louisiana, because Appalachian State had won, found that out about midway through the third quarter, and so you knew that the top 4 seeds were off the table at that point for Georgia Southern, but you knew if you won, you were playing the 5 seed, or you were the 5 seed, and you were going to play
The 12.
ULM,
Right.
who you had just defeated on about whatever hour's rest that was.
Yeah. We don't need to go back over.
No. We've done that enough.
Take the dub and move on.
Right. But now, because of the loss, Georgia Southern is the 7 seed in the Sunbelt Conference Tournament. Their first opponent will be the Georgia State Panthers on Wednesday. It'll be a 7:30 tip-off inside the Pensacola Basin or thereabouts, depending on how the first 3 of the day go. But
You will definitely be the 4th game.
no doubt, it'll be the 4th game, 7:30 scheduled tip-off inside the Pensacola Bay Center. The winner of that game will face UT Arlington, who Georgia Southern has already defeated, even though UT Arlington ended up being the 2 seed, 11-4, the record 17-7 overall. But it's the side of the bracket that Georgia Southern, I think, feels a little bit favorable with, because you have already defeated a UT Arlington team, and it's a Georgia State team that you beat by 10 here inside Hanner just a few weeks ago. But you never know how tournament play is going to play out.
Especially in a league where you know there's one bid up for grabs.
Correct.
Regardless of how well you think you did during the season, the Sunbelt is still a league. It hasn't been a 2-bid league for the men for quite a long time. But you know that one of these 12 teams is going to get a chance to walk through the door.
Yeah.
The other 11, the door is going to be locked. But everybody's going to have a chance to fight for a week to see who gets that honor.
Going through the full bracket on the women's side, the 1 seed, obviously the Troy Trojans, they won the regular season. UT Arlington, the 2. Louisiana ended up being the 3 seed. Appalachian State jumps up and is the 4 seed. So the first day on Wednesday, the day will begin at 11:30 a.m. inside the Pensacola Bay Center with the 8 seed Arkansas State facing the number 9 Coastal Carolina. Coastal Carolina and Georgia State actually tied at 4-9 overall, but since Coastal Carolina had swept the series against the Panthers, Coastal takes the 9 seed. Little Rock is the 5 seed. They will play the number 12 seed ULM at 2 o'clock on the first day on Wednesday. Number 6 Texas State will face number 11 South Alabama at 5, and then Georgia Southern, Georgia State coming in the nightcap on Wednesday. And the way that the tournaments are scheduled, because both men's and women's full tournament are in the same facility in Pensacola, you're having to spread it out. It's a little bit more favorable for the women's side because you have the first round, you're off Thursday. That's when men's basketball is playing their first round games.
Right.
The quarterfinals are on Friday, and then you get another break before the semifinals. So you play Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, Monday for the women's side.
That is interesting.
Because Friday, you've got the winner of Ark State, Coastal Carolina playing Troy. Little Rock ULM winner plays App. Texas State, South Alabama winner plays Louisiana. And then the Georgia Southern, Georgia State victor gets UT Arlington in that 4-game day on Friday. On the men's side, a little bit different of the setup. You don't start until Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
And the first game of the day is the number 8 seed Louisiana against the 9 seed UT Arlington.
Oh, Josh's final tournament.
Oh, against Jay. That's a shame. Number 5 South Alabama will face number 12 Little Rock. Number 6 Arkansas State plays number 11 ULM. And number 7 Coastal Carolina plays the number 10 seed Georgia Southern at 7:30 inside the Bay Center.
Ish.
Ish.
That's central.
Right. Oh, that's a good point.
That is central.
Glad you said that.
Because Pensacola is far enough on the panhandle that it is considered Central Time.
Huh. Interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Glad you said it.
That's okay.
But
If you're staying at Easter, you don't.
right, I'm fine. I'm good. I'm all right. So the men's side doesn't play Wednesday. They start the first round on Thursday.
Correct.
You get Friday off.
Right. If you win.
If you win, you get Friday off, and then the quarterfinals come on Saturday, where the victory of Louisiana UT Arlington plays Texas State. South Alabama Little Rock winner plays Troy. Arkansas State ULM winner plays Georgia State, who is the 3 seed. And then the winner of Coastal and Georgia Southern plays the 2 seed App State, which I think is hilarious because if Georgia Southern wins, it's essentially a trip to the Carolinas.
Don't think I haven't thought about that.
But
except we get to play them both at the beach this time, if it gets there.
Right. But the quarterfinals are on Saturday, and then you go Saturday, Sunday, Monday for the championship.
Right.
So you get Friday off in between the first round and the quarterfinals. You can go either way. You get an extra day leading into the tournament, but it almost sets up more advantageous for the women's side. Yes, they start a day earlier, but you get a break between both the first round and after the quarterfinals.
And I would say if you're one of the men's teams, look, you want to play as few games as possible. Everybody was looking for a bye, not having to worry about playing until Saturday. But if it's me, I would like to play a game at that site, get a win at that site, build some confidence at that site, and, oh, by the way, have a full day to get ready for the next opponent.
Yeah.
Now, in the case of App State, they will be getting ready at the same time for Coastal and Georgia Southern. They're going to be arriving on Thursday. They'll be at the game because this is the only time all year where you can live scout, where you can actually be at the game of another opponent. So, in essence, both teams are going to have really one hard day to get ready for the other. But to me, if you're there and you already have a win, that gives you a little bit more as opposed to having to wait for more than a week to play another game, even though you earned the bye. All you have to do, if you come out cold, if you're App State in that quarterfinal, your season's over.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have had played yet.
Right. You come out cold, and a Georgia Southern team that's already played, had a day off, it's essentially, because it's Thursday, Saturday, you're essentially back in your normal routine if you're a Georgia Southern or somebody playing in the first round. I don't know. Obviously, you don't want to have to play 4 games in 5 days, but is 3 games in 3 days and throwing off your schedule a little bit that much more advantageous?
I think it's wide open anyway, especially on the men's side, but I would anticipate, I will actually say this, I think at least one double-digit seed is going to find their way to the semis.
Really?
I think one double-digit seed finds their way into the semifinals.
I think I know which one you're hoping for.
Clearly, it's Little Rock. I mean, Ray's got to win one. He's leaving, too.
Poor Ray.
And that might be a little bit out there, but it just sets up that way where if you can get a win, get a day to recoup, then come back out against a team that has not played for 8 days because we were Wednesday, Friday last week, bumping it up because of the ESPN2 game. I think that there is the chance that this becomes a little bit more wide open than even we realize.
Yeah. Looking back on the past week for Georgia Southern men's basketball, fell to the Raging Cajuns 82-69 inside Hanner Fieldhouse on Wednesday, and it looked like one watching it from afar because we had plenty of time on Wednesday to look at pretty much everything else. That the first half went the way for Georgia Southern, the second half went the way for the Cajuns in a big-time way.
Led 15-3. First 5 minutes remind me a lot of the South Alabama home game where everything was clicking offensively. That continued throughout the rest of the first half in that game. But once the Cajuns figured out that they had to get Georgia Southern out of transition, they got in transition. Eagles were back on their heels. And that's the kind of effort I think the Cajuns had been looking for much of conference play. Look, they dominated App on the road earlier this year. They dominated Little Rock on the road earlier this year. That was a really impressive performance by them. And with the depth that they have and the talent they have, they're one of the teams that I think is a dark horse going into next week. Now, Arlington beat them twice during the regular season. One of those was in overtime at the Cajun Dome. But I would look at a Louisiana team as being a dark horse to win it all.
Yeah, I could see that. After falling 82-69 to the Raging Cajuns, turnaround on Friday inside Hanner Fieldhouse for Senior Day, the regular season finale, and it was one to remember with an 81-75 victory in overtime.
I talked about some of the senior days from the past couple of years. I talked about 2016 against App State when DeVinci Boykins, Devontae's older brother, he hadn't started all that much, was playing here and there, hits 2 early threes. Jim Fox calls timeout. That game was over 4 minutes in. Georgia Southern ran away with it, won it by 25. A couple of memories weren't that great. Losing the regular season title to Georgia State in 2019, the year before against Arlington. That place was live that night for an Arlington team that ended up winning the regular season. Georgia Southern had a long home winning streak snapped. But the other good memories, and this is where I'm going to take you with my story. It was 2018 against Troy. Earlier that day, Georgia Southern baseball had played Elon, so I had to rush over. That went 10 innings, had to rush over. You got Mark Byington.
Yeah, I had to get Byington at halftime of the women's game.
Right. And I remember talking with Jake Alsmiller during shoot-around. Like, you're only 15 threes away from the school record. He was trying to catch up to Jelani Hewitt. He said, He goes out and hits 8 threes on senior day. And I was so excited for him. We had him on post that day. It was awesome. So I'm thinking about that. So I'm walking in back to the table, and I walk by Getty. And Getty will admit that this probably isn't the season that he had hoped for. His numbers are a little bit down, especially from 3. But we spent a couple of moments talking. I said, I think you're going to go off today. And he said, you think so? And I said, yeah, I think you're going to make 5 threes. And he said, you do that, you must be knowing something. I said, if you know that, you're coming on postgame. He said, maybe I'm not going to make 5 threes. So what does he do? He goes out, he makes 5 threes.
Knowing Getty, it wouldn't have surprised me once he got to 4 to stop shooting.
The thing about the 5th three, this is about 9 minutes left. He's on the left wing. He catches it. It's a total heat check 3. He just chucks it, banks it in from the left wing, and he knows it's his 5th. As soon as he's backpedaling down the court, he looks over and points to the table. It was one of the coolest things. It was awesome. Georgia Southern was up by 6 at that point. Now, ultimately, ULM came back, took the lead. They were up 5 with 3.5 to play, but Kamari Brown scored the final 8 points of regulation, tied it with his jumper from the corner with 2 seconds left. And then Georgia Southern had an 11-0 run in overtime and ended up getting the victory, broke the losing streak. It was a very fun day for that team.
And that's one that you can use that momentum, and there's no doubt about it, of going into the conference tournament on a win.
Yeah.
You get that 81-75 victory over ULM, and yes, you're playing a Coastal Carolina team that you struggled with a few weeks ago up in Conway.
Yeah, that was not fun.
But you get them on a neutral floor. Both of you are having to travel, a little bit closer for Georgia Southern, but you get a Coastal Carolina team that you've seen twice already. It's the 7-10 matchup, which always, and especially in the Sunbelt, always seems to be one of the better games on the first day.
Yeah.
That's why it's the nightcap. And it just sets up for a really good game for Georgia Southern and the Chanticleers.
Coastal's actually leaving tonight to get down to Pensacola. I know.
Huh?
I know. They're leaving tonight. That's my intel. That's what my intel says.
All right.
There's a couple more layers to this matchup, and I'm thinking about ULM a little bit more so because, remember, Georgia Southern started 1-5 in conference play.
Yeah.
They jump-started a 3-game winning streak by beating ULM on the road.
Right.
Georgia Southern came into last weekend, lost to Louisiana. That was the 6th consecutive loss. Needed a pick-me-up. There's ULM, overtime win. So maybe this is the kick in the behind to make some kind of run in Pensacola. It's going to take a lot to do it, but maybe it's it for them because on the other side with Coastal, they began conference play 1-4. How did they get on track? Beat Georgia Southern in Statesboro. The next time Georgia Southern saw them, Coastal had dropped its previous 3 games. What did they do? They beat Georgia Southern. But now Coastal's already in kind of a rhythm. They don't need Georgia Southern to get them going because they're already going. I look at what ULM gave the Eagles as to say, there's your fire started. And for Coastal, they're probably walking into this thinking, well, we beat this team twice, and the last time we saw them, we ran them out of our gym.
Yeah. The other thing, a lot of times you see it on the flip side of what you're looking at. A lot of times if you go into a matchup like this, that you've already beat the team twice in the season, one of the biggest things, and I'm sure Cliff Ellis will talk about it at some point this week, it's really hard to beat a team 3 times in a season. But if you're on the Georgia Southern side, it's really hard to get beat 3 times in a season. And I know that sounds weird to say, but it's really hard for a team to beat you 3 times in a season. You just got to make sure that that's not in the back of your mind of, okay, we've lost to this team twice already.
They've got to check Vince Cole first. He made 11 threes in those 2 games. He was the best player for Coastal, especially in that second matchup when he was outscoring Georgia Southern by himself for about 3/4 of the first half. He just got into a heater, and he couldn't stop, and that's when the game ended. It was 8.5 minutes. Remember, that game was pretty much over with. And then you got to worry about Issam Mustafa on the inside, 6'9", 250. Vince Cole, by the way, was named second-team All-Conference a little bit earlier today. You've got to worry about Rudy Williams, the K-State transfer, who's a 2-guard but can run the point. The usual point guard, you got to worry about Ibrahim Adiba, 6'6" point guard, which doesn't exist in this league.
Yeah.
And he always finds a way to fill up a stat sheet. They've defended really well. They have scored a lot of points, number 1 in the league in scoring, but they lose close games. Of their 12 losses, 9 are by single digits. So they've been able to show how good they can be, especially against Georgia Southern with shooting 50% or better in both games. But at the same time, if you can get them into a close game, it seems that the odds may be a little bit tipped towards the Eagles, perhaps considering what they just figured out to get by ULM on Senior Day.
Taking a look at the Postseason Awards, again, men's and women's basketball Postseason Awards coming out earlier on this afternoon. And on the men's side of it, Norchad Ormir was a Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year from Arkansas State. I don't know that there was a whole lot of question
on both
in that one coming in.
And I think it's the first time in 20 years at least that the same player has won Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year.
FEODG from Troy was the newcomer of the year. Duke Dean from Troy was the freshman of the year, and I think that speaks to what Scott Cross is building at Troy. You've got the newcomer of the year and the freshman of the year because he's had to do both, get transfers and recruit freshmen to really change that roster into what it is now. When you look at it, Troy coming in to the Sunbelt Conference Tournament with a 10-6 record, 19-10 overall, and getting the 4 seed. That is a big difference from what you've seen Troy the last few years. And we've likened it to what Georgia Southern is going through now of the first and second year under Scott Cross. The third year is where Troy really figured it out.
Troy, though, hurt itself because if they would have beaten Texas State on Friday at home on national television, they would have kept their 3 seed. But because they lost and Georgia State came back and beat Louisiana, Georgia State has gone from 12th to 3rd in 6 weeks.
Good grief.
They won their final 7 regular season games, 9 of their last 10, so they got that 3 seed. And what it did to Troy was move them back onto Texas State's side of the bracket. So they may have to go through the Bobcats again, a team that just beat them, but Texas State regular season champs for the 2nd year in a row. But for that Troy team, year 1 and 2 was simply about getting rid of what was done and trying to install what they wanted to be done. And this year, that's not a Troy team that's overly talented, but they are very deep. They play defense. They really limit what you do in a number of ways offensively, and Odigi was a load for everybody to handle, very deserving of being newcomer of the year in this league.
Texas State's head coach Terrence Johnson named the Joe Gottfried Coach of the Year. First team All Sunbelt ended up being Adrian Delph from App State, Norchad Omir from Arkansas State, David Azor from UTA, Caleb Asbury from Texas State, and FEODG from Troy. But the 6th man of the year, the first year the Sunbelt Conference has given out this award. Again, Georgia Southern sweeping in on both the men's and women's side, but Elijah McCadden very rightly deserved and kind of adopting a new role with this Georgia Southern team this year.
Yeah, somebody that was basically a 3-year starter coming into his what could have been his final campaign. He does have the option to come back next year due to the COVID year, but a few weeks ago he went to head coach Brian Berg and said, look, I think I can be of best use to this team if I come off the bench. And you don't hear a whole lot of guys giving up the chance to start because that still means a lot to certain guys. But for Elijah, he's playing 28 minutes a game regardless. And it's pretty much 2 minutes into the game, he is that first sub.
Yeah.
He's leading the team in scoring, 4.5 rebounds per game, and he has shown the ability to take over contests and be a team leader. And now that it's the time of the year where that's going to be even more important, we'll see what he can do and what could be his final tourney.
So Georgia Southern and Georgia Southern men's and women's basketball both in the 7-10 matchup. Georgia Southern women's are the 7 seed against the 10 seed Georgia State on Wednesday, 7:30 the tip-off. Georgia Southern men's basketball will start the Sunbelt Conference Tournament down in Pensacola as the 10 seed, taking on the number 7 Coastal Carolina. That one at 7:30 as well, coming up on Thursday. And then women, if they get the victory, they will play on Friday in the quarterfinals against a UT Arlington team. Georgia Southern will take Friday off, and then hopefully will be taking on Appalachian State after a victory over Coastal Carolina on Saturday. And then there's all kinds of if and wins and whatnot to figure out the rest of the bracket. But the entire bracket up on sunbeltsports.org for both men's and women's basketball.
Looking forward to this. You try to convince yourself of how you're going to get to Monday night to play for a championship, whether you're the top seeded Texas State or the 12th seed Little Rock. Everybody looks to mold the story and the narrative in their own way to say, well, if this happens, if this happens, if this happens. They start to pile up for some teams, and that's why some bow out. But you know there's going to be upsets. You know there's going to be shots at the end of the game. There's going to be somebody that steps forward, just like App did last year. Justin Forrest and Michael Almonacci were terrific, and them winning 4 in 4 days to get to the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2000. I'm excited to see if App can repeat, if this is Texas State's year, if Georgia State continues to run this league, or if somebody else figures out how to get to Monday night and get a trophy.
Before we dive into Georgia Southern baseball, got a note to pass along that's a little bit off the beaten path, but still on the basketball side. Got to give a huge shout out to former Georgia Southern women's basketball assistant Toby Wagner, now the head coach at Reinhardt University, and Georgia Southern alum, former women's basketball manager, now graduate assistant at Reinhardt, Robert Strickland. They won the Appalachian Athletic Conference Championship in the NAIA ranks in a kind of interesting way to do it. In the semifinals, had to knock off the 1 seed Bryan College, who was 30-0 on the season, had won their last 90 conference games. 9-0 conference consecutive wins. But Reinhardt defeats Bryan to make the 91st, one that they would not like. And then they had to knock off number 2 seed Milligan to win the conference title and earn a NAIA national tournament bid for the 3rd year in a row.
I think back to 2020 where they were about to go.
Yep.
And that's when the shutdown happened. He has done awesome work up there.
No doubt.
He has done so well up there.
Wag's one of the best people that you will ever come across. A great basketball mind, but an even better person. Robert is very young in his coaching career, but a fantastic human being. Was my roommate on the road a lot, so got to know Robert pretty well, and two of the best people that you will come across and 2 of the best coaches in this game. But a huge congratulations to Toby Wagner and Robert Strickland from Reinhardt University. But we dive into Georgia Southern baseball. It was a little bit of a tough weekend for Georgia Southern as I guess we got to start back with a high note.
Oh, let's rewind there. We got a big one we got to talk about.
Man, that
first.
seems so long ago. Good night, that seems like so long ago.
Yeah, that was more than a week, but it wasn't more than a week.
Wow. Last Tuesday, Georgia Southern baseball at home for the home opener in front of a really, really good crowd at J.I. Clements Stadium. Ended up being an announced attendance of 2,700 plus in a 10-6 victory over the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, who are ranked anywhere from, number 7 to 21 in this week's rankings. But really good win for this team, and one that was desperately needed after getting swept by Tennessee to open up the season.
I wasn't there 2 years ago at J.I. Clements Stadium when the Eagles beat number 2 Georgia, but I've got to imagine that the atmosphere that we saw on Tuesday was comparable to that night right before the shutdown 2 years ago. I know you were there. You had Jared on with you that night. It seemed like everything was going the Eagles' way. And Georgia Southern needed things to go their way after getting swept to Tennessee the weekend before. 10 runs. And to know that 6 of those came with 2 outs against an ACC squad, and 3 of those driven in by Noah Ledford, who didn't start the game. He didn't come in until the 6th inning. Pinch hit, 2-run double. Helped close the door with that RBI single in the 8th inning. And then Jay Thompson got the final 6 outs. And I was really happy that he was the one on the mound that was able to finish things up. No
doubt. A 10-6 victory for Georgia Southern over Georgia Tech. And one of the things we talked about on the broadcast, it seemed like every inning Georgia Southern, one got the leadoff guy on, but then got it done with 2 outs. You don't see those happen in the same game very often.
scored the first 4 innings after putting up 3 runs total in Knoxville, and then got the insurance in the 8th inning because Tech made numerous runs. They actually got the game back to tied at 5. Kevin Parada hit a home run. Colin Hall went to the opposite field off Thomas Higgins, but I'll stick with him because Higgins, before he even threw his first pitch, balked. And then his first pitch was that home run that tied the game. After that, he was very good.
Yeah.
Following Danny Madden, who struck out 6, Jay, of course, finished it. 14 strikeouts that game, only 1 walk against one of the best offenses in college baseball this year. Gardner Webb found that out last weekend on the Flats.
I was looking at it today, getting ready for the Jacksonville game coming up, and we'll talk about that one in a little bit. Georgia Southern's opponents this year that we've seen so far, Tennessee, Georgia Tech, and UCF now, have 2 combined losses, both of them coming from Georgia Southern. The only time Georgia Tech has lost, again, they swept Wright State to open up the season, went the next day and defeated Presbyterian up at Rush Chandler Stadium, and then Gardner Webb, all 3 this weekend. Their only loss is Georgia Southern. UCF was coming in 4-0. Their only loss now is Georgia Southern when the Eagles got the victory on Saturday. Tennessee keeps doing their thing up in Knoxville. 2 losses between the 3 combined teams, and they're both the Eagles.
There is a thing about being battle-tested, and you wonder at what part in the season that games like that are going to pay dividends. Oftentimes you think, it's got to be conference tournament time because you've had all those experiences playing teams like that. But to pick up a win against Tech, and we'll talk about the Saturday victory over UCF in a minute, but to get wins like that early, I know the team's 2-5, but you need those experiences to help you to continue to build. When battle-tested isn't a thing that you have to just get at the end of the season. You get those little rewards along the way to show you that you're doing the right things.
Yeah, and I think you look at it, and when you get into the season and baseball, the long 56-game schedule, it kind of gets lost a little bit, but with the tough schedule in conference play that Georgia Southern has, having to go to Texas State, having to go to Louisiana, to South Alabama, that's where I think you see all of that pay dividends. You may not look back and say, hey, you remember that 4th game of the season when Georgia Southern defeated Georgia Tech and all that when you're in Acadiana in game 40 whatever. Yeah. But I think that's where you get everything rolling.
And you do things without even realizing you're doing things.
Yes.
Because you just know how to do it. You don't have to think about doing it. You just go. You just do it because you have.
The Eagles came into the weekend against UCF. Again, the Knights coming in 4-0 after they had started 4-0 on the season. But a little bit of a scary moment that we start with in the 4th inning. Nick Romano had a single up the middle off of Ty Fisher. Coach Hennon talked about it on Saturday. But just to reiterate, Coach Hennon talked about a couple of different fractures in his jaw area, but in good spirits. He is okay. Obviously going to be out for a little while for Georgia Southern, but in the grand scheme of things, how long he's off the mound isn't necessarily what you're looking at.
No, the fact that he got up, number one, was that was it. The fact that he got up, the fact that he was able to go to the hospital, he met with the plastic surgeon, met with the specialist today to see if anything else was going to be necessary. We can update you on his status as we go. He is going to be out for a little while, but knowing how tough he is and how much that Coach Hennon raved about him when we met with him preseason, I wouldn't be shocked if we saw him back at some point this season. Now, he may be donning a plastic mask or something of that nature, but I mean, I've heard of taking one for the team, but that's a different definition of it. But if those guys can find a way to rally around that, which they did on Saturday, then you can find a positive in what certainly looked to be a negative on the surface.
Ended up being a 5-1 victory for UCF on Friday, and really good work by David Litchfield. 7 innings of work, just 1 run given up over 96 pitches, and it shows why he is 2-0 on the season.
And UCF got 4 of those 5 runs on 2 Georgia Southern errors.
Yeah.
So that's a remarkably different game potentially if the Eagles are able to execute on the defensive end. Now, they would the final 2 games, but to think that it could have been an Eagles series victory if you take those 2 away, but it would have been a knuckle scraper regardless because of how good Litchfield was. But even on the other side, when Fisher came out, Georgia Southern still pitched well enough to be in it. They just couldn't get the bats rolling until the end of the game.
was a 3-2 victory for Georgia Southern over UCF. Christian Avant on his birthday would walk it off in the 9th inning, but Ben Johnson went 4 2/3, just 1 run given up over 80 pitches. Jay Thompson comes in and does Jay Thompson things through 3 1/3, just 1 run given up, 2 strikeouts for Jay over 51 pitches. And that's the part of the game that Georgia Southern has been so good at over the last 2+ years, of that middle relief that turns into long relief. When the starters haven't necessarily been able to go as long as you would like, you have a guy like Jay Thompson, a guy like Jake Martin that's turned into it a little bit this year already, where you have guys that come in, eat some innings, but do it very effectively.
It's the changing nature of pitching. You're not seeing very many guys that are going 6-7 innings anymore. Everybody wants to come out and say, give me 15 to 21 outs, and then we'll shorten up the game. But nobody wants to worry about third time through the order anymore. It's where we have gravitated to as a baseball culture. Whether that's right or wrong is just where we are. It's part of the changing nature of the game. But the fact that the Eagles have had so much depth in their bullpen a year ago, they don't win 34 games without Jay Thompson, Nick Jones, Hayden Harrison, guys like that. And they're going to have to patch it together again, especially if Fisher's going to be out for an extended period of time. Jalen Payton had to skip his start this weekend, even though he did come back late on Sunday and worked just over an inning. At the same time, though, you don't want to have to tax your bullpen, but you're lucky you have that in the case that starting pitching is only a 12 to 15 out venture instead of going 6 innings, which you would hope to see more of.
And then Georgia Southern with 2 outs after the first 2 in the 9th inning, with the score tied at 2. First 2 strikeout of the inning, then a single by Parker Beatier, because why not? A ground rule double by Jesse Sherrill, and then a walk-off single by Christian Avant.
The double by Sherrill, that close to staying in play. It bounced over that fence near the bullpen, hit the back fence. Beatier was already around and was going to slide into home anyway, but he had to go back, and then with Avant, didn't start the game. Was in the starting lineup, taken out about an hour before, comes in for the 6th as a defensive replacement. He ends up being responsible for Georgia Southern's first run. Got hit by a pitch. Jason Swan brings him in. Eagles tied the next inning. Jared Brown comes home on a wild pitch. And then in the 9th, Beatier, Sherrill, Avant got a mistake from Vespi, hit it to left. Second career walk-off hit, even better that it was on his birthday. It was cool.
And Daniel Flood had a fantastic photo of it. In case you missed it, go and check it out on social media. It's made its rounds plenty.
Yes, I saw it. It was a lovely photo.
But Georgia Southern would then move on to Sunday. UCF would get the best of Georgia Southern, 10-1 the final for the Knights on Sunday, as they improved to 6-1 on the year. Georgia Southern falls to 2-5. And really, the starting pitching, we talked about it last week. All 3 of the starters the first week for UCF had gone a pretty good ways and had gotten wins. They were all 3-0 or 1-0 with a 0 ERA, and it didn't disappoint on Sunday.
Hunter Patterson was really good. It reminded me of what Carson Wisenhunt did when he came to J.I. Clements Stadium non-conference last year. At that point, he was not a household name.
It worked out pretty well for Wisenhunt.
He ended up becoming one of the best pitchers in the AAC last year. They went all the way to the Supers, going out to Vanderbilt. It was a similar performance in the fact that he used a low 90s fastball, touched 95 at times, didn't have to throw that many breaking balls because Georgia Southern only got 2 hits against him. He hit 2 guys. He did not walk anybody. He struck out 10. So even if the Eagles could have gotten a little bit, I don't know if it would have been enough because they found a way to get to Georgia Southern in that 5th inning. Jeffrey Pena hit a blast of a home run to left center field. He is their center fielder, and I think he is a really good one. I think that he has pretty high major league potential, if not high-level minor league potential. That's assuming that Major League Baseball actually starts when it's going to this year.
Oh, we don't need to get into that yet.
We don't, but it is part of the story, unfortunately. But then they got the 5 in the 9th, and that's where it got away from Georgia Southern. Rodney Hennon got ejected. There were some things that happened with the balls and strikes. But Payton missing his start probably threw the pitching for a loop because Danny Madden had to come back for the second time in 5 days. And he was solid. 3 innings, no runs. Thomas Higgins hadn't thrown since Tuesday. You knew he was going to get stretched out a little bit, but as soon as that home run from Pena left, you kind of felt that may be it because the Eagles just could not get anything off Patterson. he kept his pitch count down low enough despite the 10 Ks, and he did that the same thing the weekend before against Siena. He was 9 strikeouts in 5 innings on 75 pitches. Yeah. So when he wasn't throwing at least 3 pitches to strike somebody out, he was getting quick outs otherwise, and he was really impressive.
Georgia Southern again falls to 2-5 on the season and ready for a 4-game week coming up this week for Georgia Southern baseball. The first coming in Jacksonville tomorrow for a 6 o'clock first pitch down at John Sessions Stadium, easy for me to say, against the Jacksonville Dolphins. And this is a Dolphins team that last year was 16-34, only 3 wins in conference play. Georgia Southern saw them in the midweek, and it was not a very good Jacksonville team.
It was a narrow victory. Georgia Southern got the win that night,
Right.
but that was a Jacksonville team they weren't that good last year.
And I think we talked about it. You could see the pieces in place for Jacksonville, but it was not anywhere close to coming together. This year, it has come together so far. 6-1 on the season with a 3-game series sweep to open up the season against High Point. All of this coming at home. Obviously, when you play baseball in the state of Florida, you're going to get a lot of home games. They got the victory over number 10 Florida State at the time last Tuesday.
Just softening them up for the Eagles later on.
You're right. Won 3-2, and then took 2 out of 3 from Troy this past weekend. Have to get the scouting report from Jerry Miller down there.
I think Barry showed up the last 2 days.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll be darned.
He got down there.
But a 3-game series against Troy. They took the bookends as they got the 6-5 victory on Friday. Troy got the best 5-3 on Saturday, and then Troy fell 5-3 to these Jacksonville Dolphins on Sunday. But it's the first of a 2-game midweek for this Jacksonville team. And so you always wonder what the pitching is going to be for head coach Chris Hayes. But Georgia Southern does know that they are going to see Michael Darrell Hicks. 1 start on the season, went 3 innings last week against Florida State. 2 hits, 1 run, 8 strikeouts on no walks in 3 innings.
This is clearly a team that took what happened at the end of last year into this year, because the numbers that you spouted out early about only winning 3 conference games last year, they won the ASUN tournament.
Yeah.
That was the shock of shocks in the NCAA baseball tournament last year, the fact that Jacksonville got a bid because they swept through the ASUN. And it's clear that this team has a lot of confidence, 6-1, having taken down a top 10 team already, just like Georgia Southern. And now we'll see if the Eagles can at least get something going on the road before they get 3 this weekend at home.
The 3 this weekend will come against the Miami University of Ohio, the Red Hawks coming into town. Friday, 6:30 the first pitch, 2 o'clock the first pitch on Saturday, and Sunday, 1 o'clock the first pitch for Georgia Southern baseball against a Red Hawks team that right now is 3-3, have only played on the weekends. They were supposed to play last week in Oxford, Ohio, against the Indiana University Hoosiers. That one had to be canceled, but took 2 out of 3 at Tennessee Martin on opening weekend with a couple of big victories, 15-6 on Friday night to open it up, 10-5 on Saturday before falling 13-8. Offense is not the problem for this Miami team.
No.
As a team hitting .310, have already scored 49 runs in 6 games. It's a team that the pitching has been what's been the question mark.
And that's the opposite of what they usually are.
Right.
Last year they hit .230, but they led the MAC in ERA. They had the number 9 overall pick in last year's draft.
Yeah, that'll work.
Kyle Bachman went to the Angels. He was a 100-mile-an-hour guy, one of the best sliders in the entire draft. So pitching isn't usually the issue for the Red Hawks, but now it seems off to an offensive start. They do have a solid weekend rotation. They do have 2 guys back from last year. I think they have 1 transitioning from the bullpen into a starting role. Engbert is going to be the number 2 guy this weekend for Miami University. But if they can find a way to pitch and keep hitting, then they'll be able to get back to the MAC tournament. And I say that because there was no MAC tournament last year. There wasn't one in 2020 either, but that was because of COVID. And even last year, Central Michigan was the regular season champion, so they went to the NCAAs. There was no MAC tourney last year, so they couldn't play their way in like Jacksonville did out of the ASUN.
It's a Miami team that will face Indiana in Bloomington on Tuesday. Tomorrow, a 4 o'clock first pitch for the Red Hawks against the Hoosiers before they make their way down to Statesboro. Again, 6:30 the first pitch on Friday, 2 o'clock first pitch on Saturday, and 1 o'clock first pitch on Sunday. And hopefully, you do not see the Red Hawks.
I'd be fine with that. I would be fine not seeing Miami University.
As much as I would love to have you in your normal chair, I would much rather have you sitting in a foreign chair in Pensacola calling a couple of wins for men's basketball.
See, since we didn't go to the Bay Center last year, I never saw the setup, but I've been told that we are up in the boonies.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they're not letting any broadcast courtside again, but I believe it's not quite what we had at Lakefront Arena in New Orleans because they had the Cubbies.
That's a great setup.
Well, I love the Cubbies.
Yes.
It felt like you get your schoolwork done. Hey,
Right.
call a game if you need to. But I think
It's almost lunchtime. You wait for the bell.
I think we're a little bit higher up. I'll have to see it once we get down there for that first round game on Thursday. Looking forward to seeing the venue. Looking forward to getting there, to seeing everybody again. I love conference tournaments and media days because that's when we all can gather and just catch up with each other. But I'm also excited to see if the Eagles can keep going what they got going on Friday for Senior Day. Maybe it's just a one-day thing, and this will be the final time we see these guys play against Coastal, but maybe they can find a little bit of magic. Maybe it's there. Because everybody's trying to convince themselves that it's going to be them. Why can't it be Georgia Southern?
Everybody loves their side of the bracket, which you would think half the people like their side of the bracket, half of them don't. But you would, like, now everybody loves their side of the bracket. Oh, it's a great matchup until it's not.
Because then what you get into is you start to say, well, you get this win, then you get this, then you get this, you go here, you get here,
and by
you go
that time,
here.
you've built up so much speed, you just blow right past it.
And then you realize you're loading up the bus and you're coming back home. But
Right.
you would hope that a Thursday win buys you an extra day. You play Saturday against Appalachian State, and to have a rivalry game with a chance to go to the semis, that would be the stuff.
Georgia Southern women's basketball will start it on Wednesday, 7:30 the tip-off-ish against the Georgia State Panthers, the 10 seed. Georgia Southern women are the 7 seed. Men's basketball will get it going on Thursday. The 10-seeded Eagles will take on the number 7 seed Coastal Carolina, and then we will follow the bracket and follow the map, hopefully all the way to championship Sunday and Monday for women's and men's respectively. But Georgia Southern baseball at Jacksonville tomorrow, 6 o'clock first pitch. We're on the air at 5:30 with the Cutwater Spirits on deck circle. And then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 6:30, 2, and 1 o'clock for Georgia Southern baseball against the Miami University of Ohio Redhawks.
Bark in the park on Saturday. Bring your four-legged friends with you.
True.
There you go.
There it is.
There it is.
But a busy week and a busy time of year, but a very exciting time as you're getting into postseason basketball.
I'm going to try to get a tan. We'll see if we're there long enough.
I don't need you to get a tan. I just need you to make sure you get Josh Sowers and Ray Tucker together again.
See, if there was anybody that was hoping that, they would have matched up in the first round. Because Arlington was all the way a little.
Either that or you put them in complete other side of the bracket so they both stay there as long as possible.
We're losing Ray and Josh next year. We're losing Ray to the OVC and Josh to the WAC.
See, I think they should have had to go to the same conference.
But at least with Josh, he's still calling baseball.
True. We still get a shot at Josh.
Ray does not call baseball for Little Rock. We'll be going out to Gary Hogan Field in May for the first time since 2018. But we'll
That
at
was
least
not
get
a
to,
fun trip.
No, it was both. The Eagles got both those wins thanks to Seth Schumann's complete game. But we'll at least get to see Josh during baseball season, and we end at Montgomery, where, again, we get to see everybody to see who can get to the NCAA regionals.
Fantastic.
And there it is.
Busy time of year, but a exciting and fun time of year as we get into Sunbelt Conference tournament time, and hopefully it's time to dance for some Georgia Southern Eagles in about a week or so. But we will tackle that next week after Georgia Southern baseball, men's and women's basketball, and everything coming up this week. But for the voice of the Eagles, Danny Reed, this is Colin Lacy saying so long, everybody.
You've been listening to Inside Eagle Nation, powered by Learfield, the official podcast of Georgia Southern Athletics.